I'm raising the stakes right now. This is a poker game. I'm shoving my chips to the middle of the table. I'm raising the ante. Anybody wants in, get in. Anybody wants out, can get out.
Those immortal words, of course, were Jim Fossil's telling everyone, you either believe or you don't believe, but if you don't believe, get the hell out because I'm raising the stakes. And here at All Wild Big Blue, we're raising the stakes as well. I want to talk about the Giants. I want to talk about the overhype that I'm seeing or starting to see a little bit already. It reminds me of the last 2, 3, 4, 5 seasons. I want to talk about, of course, doing a rookie draft profile today of DJ Davidson, the number 147th pick in the 2022 NFL draft. I laugh. You look at Twitter, you look at Instagram, you look at thumbnails, and then you go on to certain media pages and you watch certain, sports prognosticators, and you look at certain shows and people are going, you know what? The Giants could be the surprise team. The Giants could be the shocking team. The Giants could be that team that nobody wants to play. Dun, dun, dun. And I sit there and I think to myself, because that's what I say to myself when I think to myself, how many times have we heard this already? How many times do we have to go through this every season? And I'm not saying it's not a good thing to think your team is going to do well. I don't say it's not something, if you want to believe in your organization, that's a bad thing. But I think sometimes realism gets in the way of optimism. And sometimes people think optimism is realism. And I think that's the issue we have had 2 years with Joe Judge. I think that's the issue we even technically had with Pat Shurmur that first season and DJ's and Dan Jones's first season, that we were not looking at realism. We were looking at optimism. We weren't looking at the fact that the cupboard is pretty bare here in Giant Land. The salary cap is pretty screwed up. I've seen people say anywhere between 7 to 10 wins for the Giants. I see people on ESPN, the NFL Network, saying the Giants could be the surprise team. Honestly, what's going to be the surprise? Think about this for a minute. What's going to be the surprise here? Do the Giants have a chance to make the playoffs? Maybe, I would say maybe 500 to 1.
Telling me there's a chance. Yeah!
So there is a chance, but it's not a good chance. And I said this before, we need to ground our reality. We don't need to ground our reality. We just need to go into reality. And it's not being a fan. It's not you know what it's not being? It's not being a delusional fan. Because at the end of the day, those are the people that hurt the most when they lose, when the Giants lose, when the Giants drop a game 42-17. Those are the people that hurt the most. And I've said this before, Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll have done a phenomenal job of setting expectations for this team. They really have. Since day one, they have come in here and said, you know what? There is a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of, I don't know how many times I've heard Shane say, we got a long way to go. We got to take each step at a time. And I give them all the credit in the world because of the fact that that's what it needs to do. You need to set expectations. You have so many, I don't want to say issues with this team, but there are so many ifs with this team. And I know a lot of people are going to get mad that I use the if word again because I made an entire video last year that the Giants were a team of ifs. And I rattled off like 22 ifs. And I said, if all these things happen, the Giants will excel. The Giants will make the playoffs or they may be competitive. And I think we missed out on a lot of those ifs. But I've said this a million times before. We're probably going to win 4 to 5 games, and I'm fine with that. But it's the expectation of having something to look forward to. And what that is to me is building a foundation with this organization, starting it from the ground up with this draft. And hopefully your two stalwarts are going to be your first rounders in Evan Neal and Kayvon Thibodeau, and kind of move forward from there, but not sitting there thinking that all the time that you have to overhype this team and overhype this season because we are what we are. And that's what I hope people understand and people take a look at. Some people are going to say, well, you're just Mr. Negative. Really, I'm Mr. Negative. I'm Mr. Negative. Well, Mr. Negative went out and bought season tickets today. So that's how negative I am about the team. Haven't been a ticket holder in years. Went out and bought some. Because you know what? I believe enough in this organization. I believe enough in this team that I'm feeling that the last 5 years, we're not an aberration, but we're coming out of the desert. So how many people are going to sit there and tell me that? I ground myself in realism. I hope for optimism, and I hope the Giants move in the right direction and everything goes well. Maybe not this year, maybe not next year, but maybe sitting there in 2025.
Boy, that escalated quickly. I mean, that really got out of hand fast.
Now, you know what I want to talk about? I want to talk about DJ Davidson, the 5th round pick, 4th overall in the 5th round. The defensive tackle out of Arizona State, 6'3", 327 pounds. You know what's funny? I remember DJ because of the fact that I've mentioned it a few thousand times. We have UCF alums in the house, University of Central Florida. In 2016, he was committed to go to UCF. And then he decided that he never enrolled in UCF that fall, and instead he went and he signed with he went and signed with Arizona State. So that's neither here nor there. He played 8 games as a redshirt freshman as a reserve. Before that, he had a fibula injury, which ended that season kind of prematurely. He lost a bunch of weight when he did the rehab, which kind of helped him with his movement. But you know what? He was just one of those guys that I'm not going to go through his entire career. But last year he was awarded. What was he awarded? He was awarded second team all-around status and excelled in 12 starts, 57 tackles, 6.5 for loss, 5 pass breakups. He opted out of the team Pro Bowl game to prepare for the NFL draft. Now, you know I'm not a big fan of that. I am not a big fan of opting out. You are with the team, or especially in college, for 3-4 years. You get to the pinnacle, you get to the bowl game, and you just say, yeah, I'm going for the money in the NFL. Now, while people will point to something like the Jalen Smith incident, yes, or even going back to like Melvin Bratton, there are times that you get hurt in the bowl game, but honestly, the majority, I would say 99.6% of the time, you are not going to get hurt in the bowl games, but you left your team down. You let your team down when they needed you, some of these people will never play football again after college. And you know what? You just decided to go to the NFL draft, but I'm not going to say neither here nor there because it is what it is. What does he look like for the Giants? My opinion, he's the nose tackle we may need. He's that gap stuffing guy. He's that bulky gap stuffing guy. True nose tackle. Bulky, powerful. Dalvin Tomlinson-esque. Can absorb the double teams. Has enough upper body strength to hold on to that middle line and beat a single block. Now, we can't clone Dalvin Tomlinson. We can't because Dalvin's, of course, is still in Minnesota with 1 year left. But if you want to get someone that is close to Dalvin Tomlinson, someone that can command the point of attack, who can shed blockers, who can finish consistently, you're looking at DJ Davidson. To me, he would be the 80s prototypical nose tackle. He would be Jim Burt. Not saying he's going to be as good as Jim Burt, but he might be Jerome Sally, but he is Jim Burt in my mind. And like I said, he's powerful enough. He's stocky enough. I think he's got good lateral movement on the line. But you know what? I'm not going to worry about that too much. Some of the things that are worrisome. He's a guy that drops his head a lot. We've talked about this before. There's certain people that duck their head when they tackle, when they hit the point of contact. And he's actually one of those guys. And that is a terrible way to tackle because then you cannot find the running back or the quarterback if they're coming up. You lose sight of the player. Hopefully that is something that he can correct at the pro level. And there are some issues with the fact that, he's not going to be a middle of the rush guy. He's not going to give you, like Dalvin Tomlinson, he's not going to give you that big push, that big pass rushing push from the middle. That's just the way he is. I think he needs to, I really think he also, if you look at some of the film from Arizona, he's got to kind of control the line a little bit better. He needs to control the guy he's blocking in front because sometimes he lets them get a little bit underneath his pads, which could be worrisome as well. And also, he's a guy that, honestly, he kind of faded in a lot of the games at Arizona. So he wasn't really a finisher. He wasn't really finishing those games. So I mean, if you are looking for the prototypical giant nose tackle in a 3-4 going back to the 80s and the 90s, DJ Davidson would be a guy that I would probably say that Bill Parcells would take a look at. He is a guy that is going to be he could potentially be a pretty good fit in Wink's system. I'm curious to see how he does in camp. I'm more curious to see how he does during the preseason. And I think we just got to kind of leave it at that and look at it that way. Got a lot of fun stuff coming up next week because you know what? On Monday, we'll only be 3 days away from the start of training camp. So we'll have a lot of fun videos coming up. Going to do a couple live streams, all that great stuff. And like I said, it's just time, man. It's time for this organization to...
Time to nut up or shut up.
That's what they need to do, and I think they're going to do it. Like I said, this is not going to be a tremendous winning season. Don't fall for the overhype. Just be happy about what you see. Anything extra after 4 or 5 wins is gravy, and that's the way you got to look at it. And again, this is Tim with Online Big Blue, bringing you the best of New York Giants sports talk and entertainment. And as always, if you could like, if you subscribe, if you're ringing that bell, you know what that means. That'd be awesome.